And the little light on my microphone tells me that we are on the air. I'm not sure what you call that little light there on the end of the microphone, the one that lights up and tells you that you're on the air. In TV, it was called a tally light, wasn't it?
Tally light. Mm-hmm.
Tally light. I don't know if it's guys in the control booth. Is it a tally light in radio, too? There you go. There you go. We're on the air, though. That means that we need to talk about serious things. This is Shawn Boonstra, the host of Disclosure. I'm in studio with my wife of many, 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 many years, Jean. And we've actually been married this year.
25 years. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I can. It feels like a lot longer.
Does it?
No.
Uh-huh.
No, it went by really quickly. And I always tell people, don't, and people come to me and say, 25 years, congratulations. We've been married for 50. And my plea with them is, please don't tell Jean it could go on that long because she's going to pack up and leave. She has no idea it goes 50, 60, 70 years. So here we are in studio, and they just did a quick turnaround the crew because just hours ago you were working on Discovery Mountain, and you're now in season number...
We just finished production of season number 5.
Okay.
So that's exciting. Yes, Shawn, it's about 9 o'clock in the morning here. Last night at 9 o'clock, we just finished our 10th day of production for Discovery Mountain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, some people listening, I can't imagine who they might be, but some people listening might have no idea what Discovery Mountain is. Well, I mean, if, say, they've been living in a cave somewhere, they might not know what Discovery Mountain is. So tell us about it, because the Voice of Prophecy Network has a whole bunch of shows that we're rolling out. This is Disclosure, which I think is much better than your show. It's much better than your show. I think, we have a much broader following and much, it's much more interesting. But you do have a nice little show called Discovery Mountain.
And
I'll be sleeping on the couch tonight, folks. Send your complaint letters to Shawn Boonstra, Box 999, Loveland, Colorado.
Yeah, and I'm laughing because you and the rest of the ministry team here at the Voice of Prophecy has been incredibly supportive of Discovery Mountain, and I really appreciate it. So what is it? It's we call it our audio adventure program for kids. It's a half-hour weekly audio program. The best place to listen to it, easiest place, is right on our website, discoverymountain.com. And we made it a really mobile-friendly website. So if you have kids or grandkids that want to listen on a phone or a tablet, that's a great way to do it. Discovery Mountain is set in a small town up in the mountains, tells faith-based character-building stories, and of course,
I could probably use one or two of those.
One or two
the
of those. Character-building
part. I've got lots of faith, but character, I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
I do have a role, right? I do. I have a look. Let's get this out on the table now, though. I have a bit role. I think I've, in 5 seasons, delivered 3 lines.
You've done more than 3 lines.
You have put your husband in the corner.
Okay, and you know why? It's because you're hardly ever here, because you're busy doing so many other things for Voice of Prophecy, or I would make your role bigger. But you are Chaplain Simon in the program.
Right,
yeah,
yes.
You do a great job.
Yep. Kids, in case you've been listening to Discovery Mountain and wondered who Chaplain Simon was, unfortunately, this is it. It's me, yeah. The mystery is gone now. And although I'm also known as Captain Simon, because we had one episode where Jake could not get my name out right, and I became Captain Simon.
That's right.
Which is really awesome. Like
that's fun.
That's like I command some destroyer out in the ocean. Here comes Captain Simon. But in all seriousness, it's gone all over the place, and you're in season 5 and ramping up for season 6 at this point. And it's a half-hour radio drama, takes place in Discovery Mountain Camp.
Yeah, there's a town called Discovery Mountain, which, of course, the main feature is the summer camp. So every year we have a season that's all about summer camp, really fun. Every episode or every season tells a Bible story. And in summer camp, what's fun is the campers act out the Bible story at the end of summer camp. And so, all of us listening get to hear that. And it's really fun. Those are
I'm never invited for that part.
You haven't been to summer camp yet. No.
Folks, please write my wife and tell her I need a bigger role in Discovery Mountain. You can reach her at Shawn Boonstra, Box 999, Loveland, Colorado. All it has to be, just one sentence on a sheet of paper, says, "Give Shawn more." That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Well,
I don't just want to be the captain. What if the captain dies?
Well, we
Are you
do
gonna,
have some control over that.
Whoa. Are you going to kill him off in season 6?
No, I'm
Am
not
I going to get killed off?
I'm not going to kill him off.
All right.
No, I'll be nice when I write your parts. I promise.
Because, people do that. The unwanted character dies.
Yeah, that's true. But this is a kids program. We're not going to do that. We're not going to kill off the chaplain.
All right. What's the theme, and is that supposed to be a surprise, or what's the theme in season 5? Yeah.
No, I think we can give a little teaser here for our disclosure listeners. Season 5, we're going to be telling the story of Moses.
Oh.
So, of course, the
Moses
whole
and the
story
Ark?
of Moses, not Moses and the Ark.
No,
Maybe
I did
you
that.
need to
Okay,
listen.
no, listen. I did that on purpose. I can't tell you how many people have told me about Moses and the Ark.
Oh, okay.
We all know it was Abraham and the Ark.
Of course, Abraham and the
No,
Ark.
it's Noah and the Ark. No, this is a Bible-based show. We have read the stories,
Yeah,
but Moses is kind of the theme that's going to show up.
Yeah, and Moses' life, massive. There's a lot of great Bible lessons there. And we're going to start with Moses as a baby in the bulrushes, kind of end when he has that encounter with God with the burning bush in the desert. And later on, we'll tell the story of the Exodus out of Egypt. But there's
somehow you tie
great
this
lessons.
all to a camp in the mountains.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the early part of Moses' life, what's kind of going on is he's not a young man by the time he rescues the Israelites out of Egypt. He's 80. But God takes him through a journey where he has a faithful mother. The influence of his mother Jochebed is incredible. He goes to the palace. He's prepared there. And then God sends him out into the desert in Midian and prepares him for this future ministry that he has to rescue at age 80 to deliver the Israelites. So we're telling the story. It's kind of a coming of age story for Moses.
Right.
And of course, we have some characters in Discovery Mountain that are going through a similar process. I always like to do that. I find a Bible story and try and show how those same principles apply to the characters who live in this community, also experience similar things.
And it's fabulous. Moses at 80. He gets started at 80. Have you pictured me at 80 yet? I mean, look at this pretty face. It's not going to be this pretty forever. Eventually, I'll be 80.
You will be, and
it'll
you'll
just
still
slide
look
off
good.
of my.
You get better with age, Shawn.
They can sell all the miracle creams you want. You can sell all the miracle creams you want and do all the nips and tucks you want, but at some point, your face still slides off your head. It's just going to happen. And that's why, I have a spiritual lesson here.
Okay.
The spiritual lesson is this: marry for character, because we're all going to look the same when we're 95.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. Marry for character. All right. Let me redeem myself on Abraham and the Ark and Moses and the Ark. We actually are going to demonstrate some Bible knowledge today.
Absolutely.
And here's what we're going to do. I just wrapped up recently with Revelation Speaks Peace in Denver. And if you're not familiar with what Revelation Speaks Peace is, it is a public seminar that we put on in cities around the world. I used to do it 4, 5, 6 times a year, but now I just do it once. And the most recent city we did this in was Denver, Colorado. And it's a Bible prophecy seminar. We go through all of the major themes of Bible prophecy. We especially focus on the books of Daniel and Revelation. And spend quite a bit of time doing it. My promise to people is that they'll have the tools and understanding they need to interpret Bible prophecy for themselves, read it for themselves, and we show them, in particular, how Bible prophecy has been understood for the first, say, 1,850 years of Christian history. It comes as a surprise to people that for about 1,850 years or so, roughly, give or take, Christians they were unanimous on what Bible prophecy was about and what it meant and what the symbols meant. And then suddenly in the last, 100 and some odd years, we have suddenly had this buffet of meanings, and people just, you can't understand it. So we show them historically what Christianity has believed and the tools you need to understand it for yourself and learn to read it like any other book. So during the course of that, I always put a question box in the lobby. I used to just take questions from the floor, and no way, because we'll be there all night. If you have, sometimes we have 500 people sitting there, sometimes we have 3,000 people sitting there. And if you take questions off the floor, you're not going to get out before 3 a.m. So I put a question box in the lobby, and then I bravely attempt to answer them all. So here's what I've done today. I've brought a stack of those questions.
You have them right
from
there in
Denver.
front of you. Yeah.
I've got them in front of me, and we're going to look at some of those. You're going to ask me those questions, and we will try to answer them from the Bible. And I brought about 100 of them. So, I know.
We'll be here for a while.
No, we have to answer one every 10 seconds.
Oh, okay. Ready, set, go?
No. I just give all the answers now in advance, and then people can rewind the show and listen. It's yes, no, maybe, sometimes, no, yes. No, let's ask the question. Let's get started.
Let's do that.
There's only like 4 minutes before the next break.
Okay, let me throw out the first question, then there's some great ones here.
Yeah.
Shawn, why would Jesus tell his disciples that some of them wouldn't die before the second coming?
Yeah, I get this one all the time. And so let's set the table for that before the break.
Okay.
And where are my glasses? I'm
Right
flipping
here.
through the pages of my Bible. Although I have a computer Bible in front of me, it just doesn't make great radio. If you don't hear the pages turning, you don't actually believe that I'm going to the Bible text in question. Okay, here's the passage. Let's take a look at this. It's Matthew 16, and this has confused a lot of people. The Bible says in, I'm trying to get my glasses around my headphones here in the
You
studio.
did it.
Did I do
Kinda.
it?
Looks a bit awkward, but you made
Oh,
it
no.
work.
This is a charming look, no? It's a charming look.
Sure.
All right.
Let's go with that.
All right. Matthew 16, verse 28. Assuredly, this is Jesus speaking to the disciples, and people find this terribly mysterious. Assuredly, I say unto you... No, let's back up to verse 27, actually.
Okay.
For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works. So what's the general topic here? What is the general topic?
Well, Jesus is saying that he will come back in the glory of his
Yeah, so
Father.
the general topic would be
Yeah, the second coming.
the second coming. There. See, I knew you could generalize. I knew you could do it. All right, verse 28. Assuredly, I say to you, he continues, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom.
So it seems, at least at a first read, that these individuals would still be alive at the second coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are confused saying, all right, we don't know of any disciple who is still alive today, and
Right.
Jesus has not come back, so Jesus got something wrong. No, he didn't. Right. The topic is the second coming, and it describes in detail in verse 27 that he'll come in the glory of his Father with his angels. So there's a glorious appearing of Jesus. Some people would call that the parousia. The Greek word is parousia that the Bible often uses. It uses it over in 1 Thessalonians 4. A parousia is the grand entrance. I actually don't know if it's parousia here in this verse. I'll have to look that up during the break.
Okay.
Will come. No, it's not. I don't think so. Well, we'll check it. I'll check it. I will look up the Greek during a commercial
Okay.
and then get back to you on that. But it's describing the glory of the second coming, and the other component in this little discourse is that Jesus will reward people.
Right.
So Jesus comes in glory, and there's the reward. And then he says to the disciples, some of you will not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Now, I have seen people do amazing things with this passage trying to make it fit. Some people say, oh, no. This is speaking to the last generation. And there's a theory it's a modern theory, didn't exist for 850 years, but that there's a big gap in prophecy of thousands of years, and that prophecy restarts at the very end for a couple of years. Never taught in Christianity until the middle of the 20th century in a popular fashion, and not really till the 19th century in an academic fashion at all. So it's a new idea, and then people have tried to say he's talking to the last generation right before the second coming, and they're trying to make it stretch to fit like that. You don't have to make this stretch. There's a small key to reading the Bible that completely unlocks this. You can tell that I'm trying to build suspense, right?
Yeah, let me guess. You're going to tell us
there's
after the break.
Oh, I'm going to tell you after the break. Like, there's an answer, but you don't get it unless you listen to this entire commercial and come back after this break. So you hear that? They started the music.
They did.
Right on cue. So there is an easy answer. Remember,
Okay.
the components are Jesus will come in glory. It's a glorious appearing. And then he rewards people. Those are the two things we're looking at. And then he says to some of the disciples, some of you will not taste death till you see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. How could that possibly be true? Well, we'll be back in a moment to find out. Now, to help you in your world of Bible study, I want you to listen to this commercial and take advantage of this offer from the Voice of Prophecy, and I'll be right back.
Are you searching for answers to life's toughest questions like, where is God when we suffer? Can I find real happiness? Or is there any hope for our chaotic world? The Discover Bible Guides will help you find the answers you're looking for. Visit us at BibleStudies.com or give us a call at 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides. Study online on our secure website or have the free guides mailed right to your home. There is never a cost or obligation. The Discover Bible Guides are our free gift to you. Find answers in guides like, does my life really matter to God? And a second chance at life. You'll find answers to the things that matter most to you in each of the 26 Discover Bible Guides. Visit BibleStudies.com and begin your journey today to discover answers to life's deepest questions.
And that's the break. And I did my homework during the break. I didn't think so. Parousia doesn't appear anywhere here.
Okay.
And even the translation makes it pretty clear that it doesn't. When it says that Jesus will come again or come in the glory of his Father, it's erkomai.
All right.
Actually, listen, I got a little pronouncing thing on my computer. It's going to tell us how to pronounce this word. Listen to this. This is so great.
Strong's G 2064, erkomai.
Oh, I got it wrong. Erkomai. I think I
That's
spit into the
so
mic.
helpful, that pronunciation
Why? Because you
feature.
you speak Koine Greek to people all the time?
No, but just with Bible names. Like when we're doing Discovery Mountain, for example, we want to make sure that we're pronouncing
you're
the
British.
Bible names properly.
I'm from Dutch stock. I can get that guttural thing going.
Yeah, I have trouble with that.
No, you spit on me when you do it.
Do I?
Yeah. Okay. The questioning. Can you do erkomai?
No, probably not.
No. Erkomai. Only here on Disclosure would you hear me make guttural noises for your entertainment. Okay. The question that we were asking is Matthew 16, and this one has troubled people for a long time. Jesus said, I'm going to come in the glory of my Father with his angels, so a glorious appearing, we were saying before the break, and reward each according to his work. So there's the reward at the second coming, and then he says to the disciples, some of you will not taste death until you see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Here's the answer. Here's the key. The problem is that this is the very end of Matthew chapter 16. And so we often read and stop and say, well, that's the end of the discourse. Here's the problem. There were no, I should say, chapters and verses in the original manuscripts. Matthew was written as one long document in the Greek language. And if you go back and look at some of these ancient documents, they were really hard to read. They didn't even leave spaces between the words. It's just one long string. And so we tend to stop there. Now, chapters and verses were a much later addition. We can thank Stephen Langton, the Archbishop of Canterbury at one point, who started doing that. It's very helpful because you and I, in this very thick book, can turn to a passage very quickly.
It's helpful for us as a modern reader, definitely.
Right. So, and so they added things. Even punctuation has been added in a lot of cases. We're trying to make sense. But we've made some mistakes. This probably shouldn't have ended here because it continues on in Matthew. Oh, look at this. I've got my passage covered with Post-it notes. I won't even be able to continue reading. Okay, here we go. All right. I'm moving my Post-it notes. I'm moving my Post-it notes. Matthew 17. Just keep reading.
The next chapter.
Yeah, and it'll start to make sense. Matthew 17 and verse 1. Now, after 6 days, it says, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, led them up on a high mountain by themselves. All right. Peter, James, and John. Is that all of the disciples, yes or no?
It is not.
No. It's 25%.
Yeah.
Right? Is it 25%?
Peter,
yes,
James,
it is
and
25%.
John.
Yes, it is 25%.
Yes, it
you
is.
didn't expect to have to do maths today.
I didn't. This early in the day.
I know.
No.
25%.
Yeah.
So it's not all of them. And he said, some of you will not taste death. Now listen to this. And he was transfigured before them. This is Matthew 17, verse 2. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as the light. What did he just do?
Right.
A glorious revelation of himself.
Right.
Then it says, and behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Now, what are those? Those are two people of faith. One was caught straight up into heaven without tasting death. Right? Which we know happened. Well, I'll show you that in a minute. Elijah's caught straight up into heaven without tasting death, taken there without having to die. Moses, we know from Deuteronomy 31, had to die.
He died.
And the Lord himself buried him. So now we have this scene where Jesus is transfigured into his glorious appearance. We have somebody who died, and we have somebody who was caught straight up into heaven. And we have some of the disciples watching this. Now let's compare that to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. I got way too many Post-it notes in my Bible. Well, I like putting Post-it notes in there. That's a little secret. People think I memorize everything. I don't memorize anything. I have no memory left. It's gone. So I put Post-it notes in my Bible, and they tell me where to find things and what to say.
So where are you headed? 1
Thessalonians chapter 4.
Okay. And verse?
For this we say, here we go. This is Paul writing to people who are worried about Christians who have died, right? What are we going to do? Jesus is coming again, but some of our friends are dead. What do we, they're gone. And so he says, I do not want you, this is 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 13, but I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep. The Bible 70 times or so refers to death as asleep. Lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. So don't worry, God's going to take them to heaven too. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede or go ahead of those who are asleep or dead. Here it comes. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel and the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. What just happened to the dead?
They rose
They rose
first.
from, right. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall ever be with the Lord. So there it is. We just had the glorious appearance of Christ. All the angels are there, and the trumpet blows, and the dead are raised, and those who are believers and alive at the moment are caught up without having to taste death. What did Jesus just show some of his disciples? A tiny picture of that. They saw him coming in his kingdom symbolically with Moses and Elijah, someone who died. The Lord buried him. There's a story called the Assumption of Moses. It's a well-known Greek story. Hebrew story, not Greek. It wasn't Greek. It was a Hebrew story that we know. It describes Moses being raised from the dead and taken to heaven by God. And we know that part, that's not in the Bible, that book, but the book of Jude actually quotes from the Assumption of Moses. So we know that part of the story has to be true.
Yeah.
There's a quote there that says that the devil contended over the body of Moses.
Right.
He was upset about something. Well, the Assumption of Moses, that's a quote from the Assumption of Moses, said that Moses was raised from the dead. And why would the devil be upset? Well, right, does he have to be in heaven? He's a sinner. Jesus hadn't died on the cross yet. If you read Luke's account of the Transfiguration, by the way, it says that they were there to discuss with Jesus what he was going to accomplish at Jerusalem. Both Elijah and Moses are highly invested in what's going to happen at the cross because that's their right to be in glory. So there you go.
Beautiful.
The confusion ends if you just keep reading on into the next chapter because the chapter and verses are artificial and Jesus literally fulfilled it right away.
Okay,
right away.
Right away with the Transfiguration.
Right.
Yeah,
We don't have
nice.
Peter, James, and John hidden in a cave somewhere, still alive, waiting.
Right.
And that explains it. Just remember, no chapters and verses. And you should get in the habit of reading the whole book every time anyway. Don't just read a verse here or there. Read the whole book every time. Okay.
Very good. Nice. All right, Shawn, here's another question. Why is it that when you raise your children in the church, that they quit going to church when they are older? Sounds like someone's gone through some personal struggle here.
That is unfortunate. I would say, I would say that's not universally true.
Sure.
I would say that a lot of kids stay in the church. They love the church. Some leave. But here's what I've noticed about that is that even if you raise your children right, they might leave.
Yeah.
And even if you raise your children wrong, they might stay. Why? Well, it's because we all have personal choice. And we have to remember that we all turned our backs on God. He creates a perfect environment in the Garden of Eden, and we turned our backs on God. And we walked away. Is that God's fault? No. So, sometimes it is our fault as parents when, we didn't do things right or portray God correctly. That, when I lose my temper and then they hear that God is called a father, they wonder if God is like that, So I've got things that I've had to backpedal on as a parent.
I think every parent does.
But I would say it's not necessarily your fault that they left. The reason that people can go is because we all have freedom of choice. That's why. Everyone gets to choose for themselves. God is not going to force anybody into the kingdom of heaven. It just doesn't work that way. Here's an interesting story. I found out after I'd been ordained to the gospel ministry that, a relative came to me and said, did you realize that your grandfather had prayed for most of his life that you would become a minister? I had no idea. And the day my grandfather died, there was zero chance I was going to be a minister. I don't want to rehearse everything, but I was a heathen. I don't know how you can put it nicely. I know you still believe
good way to put it.
I'm still 10% heathen in your opinion. I know that. But he'll be surprised in glory to meet me there. He was a godly man.
He was.
Yeah. I would say to parents, if your kids have left the church, a couple of things. 3 things, probably. Number 1, don't blame yourself. And if you know you're at fault, then apologize and wait and pray. Lecturing to your children isn't going to work. Sicking the preacher on them probably isn't going to work. I have parents come to me and say that all the time. Hey, would you go visit my child? Well, would they want to visit for me? Well, they need your help. Yeah, but do they want a visit from me? Did they ask for it? Well, no.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then sending me is not going to fix it.
No, because they have the freedom of choice.
Oh, freedom
and you
of choice.
showing up isn't going to, necessarily
Well,
sway
it's
them.
worse than that. And now you know that your parents have been talking behind your back with people, and it's
Exactly.
just going to anger them. I would highly recommend against that approach. And parents are frustrated when I say no. It's not going to work. So there's the freedom of choice. Don't blame yourself. If you know you're to blame, at least in some capacity, then apologize and keep on praying. God does hear those prayers. He won't violate the freedom of choice. The next thing I want to say, I said I had 3 things.
Yeah.
They have freedom of
there's
choice.
There's a Bible promise.
Yeah, I know. Just a minute. I'm trying to remember my second point. Don't run ahead of me. All right. Proverbs 22, verse 6. Let's go to the Bible promise because I can't remember what my second point was. But the Bible promise is this. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they were old, they will not depart from it. Something does happen later in life. If you've done your best as a parent, remember, God did his best as a parent, and nobody does better than God, and we still rebelled. You can't blame yourself. You got to keep on praying. Don't sick the preacher on them. Oh, that was point number 2. But claim that promise. Stand on it. Lord, you said that when they're old, they won't depart from it. Something does happen. It's very easy for us to rebel as human beings when, you're 16, 17, 18, 20 years old. But something happens. You get up into middle age and you start thinking about things,
Yes.
your youth.
Yes.
I even am kind of pining for the old home country. Even though I was born here in North America, my parents were immigrants, and I find myself finding deep attachment to that old home country and learning the language and
Right, although you never lived there. You
No,
still
no.
feel that
Yeah, I feel
connection.
that.
Right.
What you plant in your child's heart is going to show up later. So
Right.
you gotta look at it this way. Look, if a bad situation manifests itself in negative things much later in life, as counselors will tell you, then planting good things early in life is going to show up a little later in life as well. And again, God won't force them, but I've seen amazing answers to prayer. And the prayer that I often recommend people pray is this. Lord, it's a scary prayer. Do whatever it takes to get their attention and let them know you love them.
Yeah.
And he'll do it. You got to be ready for it because sometimes that means bottoming out. But I've seen God answer that again and again and again. And with family, it's the hardest thing in the world. Look, I preach all over the world, but you can't preach to your own family. It works. It's a different dynamic. Even Jesus had family struggles. His family mocked him until much later in life, his brothers and sisters and so on. So if you're struggling with this, number 1, don't blame yourself. If you know there's something you need to apologize for, then apologize for it. Number 2, pray for them. Number 3, stand on that promise. When you train up a child in the way they should go, when they are old, they will not depart from it.
Amen.
And those seeds that you plant are going to be there later. In my case, it was my grandfather never got to live to see the answer to that prayer that I'd be a preacher. And it happened, and we'll meet up again one day, and I'll be able to say, hey, guess what? Or, oh, thanks a lot. I wanted to be a famous politician, and now, yeah. But parents, look, don't beat yourself up. You can't. You don't have a time machine. You can't go back. Apologize for what needs apologizing for. And start praying for that child and love them unconditionally. And I think that's going to go a long ways.
Nice.
So you're a mother. I didn't let you speak on that. But
No, I agree with what you said. I think we all have things that we would do differently if we did have time machines. But a genuine apology can go a long way. And don't beat yourself up and trust this promise from Proverbs that those things that you planted when they were young will be there when the child's older and when they need them.
Oh, yeah, it will. It'll show up. So there you go. I hear the break music again. So that means that I'm going to take a well-deserved break. I'll have a little nap while you listen to these important messages. And Jean will be queuing up the next question. What is going to be the next question after the break?
The next question is a good one. Is Donald Trump the Antichrist?
Oh, boy. You had to know that was going to come
That's a
in.
biggie.
All right. We'll come back right after the break. Is Donald Trump the Antichrist? You listen to these messages, and I'll be right back while my wife answers that question. Oh, it's still playing. Okay, now go to the break.
Are you searching for answers to life's toughest questions? Like, where is God when we suffer? Can I find real happiness? Does my life really matter to God? Or is there any hope for our chaotic world? The Discover Bible Guides will help you find the answers that you're looking for. Visit us at BibleStudies.com or give us a call at 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides. Study online on our secure website or have the free guides mailed right to your home. There is never a cost or obligation. The Discover Bible Guides are our free gift to you. Find answers in guides like A Second Chance at Life. You'll find answers to the things that matter the most to you. Visit BibleStudies.com and begin your journey today to discover answers to life's deepest questions.
All right, that's it for the break, and we had a question, an interesting question.
Yes.
And this is the question that's going to divide all of America.
Well, Shawn, you've been answering questions that you receive at live events that you do. These came in Denver at your Revelation Speaks Peace seminar.
Right.
And someone put this question in your question box. Is Donald Trump the Antichrist?
Yeah. Oh, boy. So here we go. You know, right away, 60-some% of Americans are going to say, yes, he is. And some 60-some% of us are going to say, no, he's not. And here,
60 plus 60?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no. Actually, that didn't work out. No, you know what? I was thinking of millions. 60-some million people are going to say yes. 60-some million people. 120% of America has an opinion on this.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm not all
Just
that
had to
good at
call you
math
on
in the
that.
morning either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was my chance, to get a little bit even with you.
120% of Americans believe. And everybody outside America is saying, yeah, absolutely, that's America for you.
Yeah.
They,
There you go.
they're so in. Okay, this comes in all the time. And here's what happens. We tend to look at something that's happening in our day and age and wrap all of Bible prophecy around it. And we want to hang the entire book of Daniel or Revelation on one individual. And that is not how Bible prophecy unfolds. If you read it carefully, very carefully, what you find, particularly in Daniel and Revelation, these are companion books, and this is what I teach in Revelation Speaks Peace. All of these prophecies typically begin in the day of the prophet and unfold all the way down to some last day event. So if you read Daniel 2, you get the succession of world kingdoms followed by the second coming, and the world kingdoms begin in Daniel's day. Same thing in Daniel 7, same thing in Daniel 8. In Revelation chapter 2 and 3, you got this series of 7 churches, begins in John's day, and almost all scholars are agreed that the 7 churches are not just ancient literal churches, but they tend to forecast what's actually happened in Christian history from John's day down to the second coming. So it's a huge sweep of things. But in the last 150 years or so, we've kind of been taught that all of prophecy happens in a couple of years at the very end, which is a brand new thought. It's not so. And so this question comes in all the time. So there's an election. Ooh, is this it? Is this it?
Yeah, I've heard this question asked. George Bush.
Well, that's the point,
on and
right?
on. Mm-hmm.
Years ago, it was Ronald Reagan is the Antichrist. And here's how they came to that. They ignore all the context of the whole Bible, which is a dangerous game to play when you're interpreting Bible prophecy. And they said, look, his name is Ronald Wilson Reagan. Each name has 6 letters, so 666. There he is, the beast of Revelation. And it's like, that is so silly because he doesn't match anything else.
Right.
Now, some people might say, hey, Donald Trump, we think he's pompous. And other people thought Obama was pompous. It all depends on which side of the... And it says pompous about the beast. Yeah, but nothing else...
Well,
matches, and frankly, that's your opinion. Only half of the room thinks that person is,
Plus, certainly there are a lot of other people who are alive right now who could be described as pompous. So
come on, you're looking right at me. You're pointing at me. I'm not pompous.
No. I wasn't saying you.
I'm jovially pompous.
Jovially.
All right, that's it. Out of the room. Out.
Pompous.
Get out of the studio. That's it. Oh, you're not actually going to go, are you? I need you for the rest of the show. Then you have to go. Okay, so they said Ronald Reagan was the Antichrist, 666. It was so silly. Then Barack Obama was the Antichrist, right? And that one actually was pretty darn creative. I've got to give them creativity points for this one because they had to really stretch. Here's what Jesus says in Luke chapter 10, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Mm-hmm. And so somebody went and did some homework, and they said, well, the Greek word for lightning is astrape.
Astrape.
Okay. Well, that doesn't mean anything. So they said, well, what would lightning be in Hebrew? Mm-hmm. Even though Jesus was speaking Aramaic. Well, that would be Barak. And so,
spelled differently.
Yeah, so lightning is Barak, even though it's astrape in that passage. And then when it says he fell from heaven, it's Uranos in the Greek.
Okay.
But they thought, no, let's change that to Hebrew too, which is Bama, the heights. So Barak Bama, they found, I mean, and Satan's mentioned it. No, it's so silly. And of course, they were all wrong, apparently all wrong, because he's now left office and he didn't usher in the final tribulation or anything like that. So is Trump the Antichrist? Now, we don't have time for the whole study. We'd have to get into what the beast is and so on. But no, I'm going to tell you right now, No.
Okay.
And you might like him and you might not like him. I think all Christians, no matter who's in that office, are supposed to respect who's in that office. We can respectfully disagree. I've disagreed with almost every president who's ever been in there. But, we are to live as good citizens as Christians and stuff. But here, I will tease you with this. Beasts in prophecy. We've totally misplaced this one. Some people say the beast is this computer in Belgium because the employees who had to use this computer
I've
in the
heard
80s
that.
said, "Oh, what a
Yeah.
beast." And they nicknamed it the beast.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. That's the end of time. No, that's so silly. You cannot cherry pick verses, one out of context here or there. It doesn't work that way. You've got to read the whole book. And when you read the whole book, the meanings become really obvious. Beasts in Bible prophecy, if you compare, Daniel chapter 7 is good homework. It tells you there explicitly in verses 17 and let me peek here, verse 17 and verse 23, that beasts in Bible prophecy represent kings and kingdoms, political powers. So this is a political power. It's a little bigger than one individual, what the Bible's talking about with the beast of Revelation. And it comes up out of the sea. That's symbolic for a Gentile nation. Why? Well, the Jews believed they lived on an island surrounded by Gentile nations. And when you read these prophecies, like in Daniel 7, Revelation 13, if you want a big eye-opener, read those chapters together. You get the same animals, you get the same scenario with slightly different details. And what it is this succession of Gentile kingdoms that dominate Israel coming up out of the sea. It's Gentile nations, emerging empires, emerging out of the strife that takes place here on earth, political, military strife, and so on. So a beast power is not one person. A beast power is a power. And beast doesn't necessarily mean beastly. It's just an old word for animal, right?
Yeah.
So we've got these four beasts that crawl up out of the ocean: Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, in Daniel chapter 7. And John puts all those elements together in one, saying there's some outcome of all these world kingdoms at the end that is the beast of Revelation. But it's a political power. I'm going to say no. I'd stand on that. We could spend 3 hours on it, but no. Every president has been the Antichrist ever since I started teaching this stuff. And no, that's too easy, too simple, too facile.
Yeah. So
the word of the day.
Facile.
Facile.
Good. That good word of the day.
Yep.
So the principle there would be to not try and interpret Bible prophecy through the current lens of whatever the political landscape is that we're living in, but keep that historical long-range perspective that you just described.
Yeah, yes and no.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Keep the historical perspective. You absolutely do want to look at what's going on in this world. Matthew 24 tells us pay attention to what's going on in your world.
Well, of course.
Right. But you do that after you've read the whole book.
Yeah.
Please stop lifting one verse out of the book of Revelation and building a theory on it. That's the reason we have so many foolish books for sale today. And I'll just be that blunt. They're foolish. They take 2 or 3 verses and they stretch them. They do linguistic murder to some of the words, suggesting that, this sounds like this nation today because it sounds alike. That's not a reason. Read the whole thing. And when you gather all of the data, it's hard work. It's much easier to just speculate. You don't have to speculate if you read the whole thing. You're right. Take the long view, read the whole book, and it will be obvious what we're talking about.
And then put whatever's happening now, add it to that long view of what you've already learned and understood.
And the important thing to remember, again, is that for more than 1,800 years, we didn't have this confusion.
Right.
This idea that you could just lift 1 or 2 verses out of Bible prophecy and make them saying whatever you want, like playing take an old fiddle, play any tune you want it. It's silly. It's modern confusion. And maybe we should have expected that because deception and confusion are major themes in Bible prophecy for the very last days.
That's true.
And we're more biblically illiterate than we ever have been. If we were as biblically literate as our forefathers, we wouldn't be jumping to conclusions like this.
Yeah. Wow.
Sermon of the
Very
day.
True.
Sermon of the day.
Go.
All right.
Good answer. All right.
I thought it was brilliant. I mean, guys in the control room, right? Brilliant answer.
Yay.
Yeah, they want to keep their jobs. I'm getting thumbs up.
Applause sound effects. There we go.
Do we have an applause track?
I don't know. Probably.
Yeah, no, I'm the one with pompous words. Okay.
Here's another good question, Shawn, that came in. Someone writes, what was God doing before he created the universe?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. People ponder that. To really know, you'd have to be there. Right.
True.
And it's hard for us to picture a God outside of the creation because all we understand is the physical creation that we live in. And it's a very old question, actually. What was God doing before he created the universe? People do ask this all the time. In the 4th century, Augustine of Hippo, St. Augustine, was asked the same question. Somebody came, what was God doing? And they were just being a smart aleck.
They were trying to
and
just
sometimes
kind of
people are giving me
him.
questions to be smart alecky, right?
Yeah.
And I deserve that. I'm a bit of a
You
smart
can handle
aleck.
it.
Yeah, I
You
can
can
handle it.
handle it.
But somebody asked, what was God doing before creation? They're trying to play, and his answer wasn't very nice. He was saying he was getting hell ready for people who ask questions like that.
Oh, that's what Augustine said.
Yeah, that's what Augustine said.
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
I don't really know what God, but the Bible does reveal one thing God was doing, God the Father was doing before creation.
Okay.
It's found in John chapter 17. Now, John chapter 17 is Jesus speaking to his Father.
Right.
It's the real Lord's Prayer. Like in the Sermon on the Mount, we have what some Christians would call the Our Father.
Which is more of an instruction in how to pray.
That's right. It's a model prayer.
Yeah.
But the real Lord's Prayer, where you can hear Jesus speak to his own Father, is in John chapter 17. Listen to this as verse 24. Father, I love this. I mean, we get. I just interrupt myself. You get to hear Jesus speak to his own Father.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, that's divine eavesdropping. I love it. Father, verse 24. Father, I desire that they also whom you gave me, speaking of the disciples, may be with me where I am, that they may behold my glory which you have given me, for you loved me before the foundation of the world. So what was God doing before he created the world? God the Father was loving God the Son. The Godhead were loving each other. And the definition of God in 1 John 3 verse 4 is God is love. Yeah. And so people always say, how can there be three persons, one God? You have to. If God is love, you can't have one individual floating around by themselves out there. And that's another topic for another day. But God was loving the Son.
So this love pre-existed the creation of the universe.
Yeah, of course. The Godhead was there.
That's wonderful.
Father was
love that.
loving. Okay, but then it gets better.
It does.
It's entirely possible that the entire creation was an outgrowth of that love that they had for each other.
Okay.
Here, Colossians chapter 1 is speaking about Jesus, and it took me years to dawn on this as a kid, that the Creator is Jesus. Right? I grew up, God the Father created the world. Jesus had to mop things up. And that's kind of the twisted view. Yeah, that's kind of the twisted view that we actually got that idea from the Gnostics. And it kind of spilled into Christianity. But Colossians 1 is speaking about Jesus, and here's what it says. For by him, that's Jesus, all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth. So who did the creating? Jesus. Visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created through him and for him. So Jesus was turned loose to create, but it was a gift to him.
Oh, wow.
So Jesus created everything, but it was done for him. This is a gift from the Father to the Son. They're all involved in creation. In the creation story, you find all the elements there.
God the Father,
God the Father, yeah, right. You find
Jesus.
all members of the Godhead there. But it seems, if you do a little detective work, and we'll have to get to heaven and ask to know for sure, but it seems like the love of God was too big for just the Godhead, and they said, let's create something we can love. We've got so much to share. Let's create the entire human race, and this is a gift for my Son. I'm going to give you the human race as a gift for you to love and them to love you.
Isn't that a beautiful picture of the Godhead?
Yeah.
That is, I just love, Shawn, how you put those two verses together. That's
It's impossible that we
incredible.
were created by Jesus, but as a gift for him. And so when you read the Bible language about Jesus and the human race, the relationship's to be intimate. He's called the groom, and we're called the bride. He's called our older brother. It was meant as a family for him. Yeah. Because the love of God was too big to just contain among the three. And so there you go. What was God doing before he created this universe? God the Father was loving the Son was loving the Father, the Holy Spirit was loving the Father and the Son, and it got so big that they just created the whole universe to love even more. And
love it.
I don't mean that in a New Age sense. It's not just everybody getting in tune with the harmony of the universe.
No, right. Because
love handles
is love.
Love handles hard things too. Not everything about
Absolutely.
love is nice, right? I mean, I've had to live with you for 25 years. Not everything's been nice.
No, I would agree with that.
So what's the next question coming up?
All right, let's see. After the break.
Oh, it's a big one.
It's a long one.
Okay, no time to ask it.
Okay.
Ask me after the break. You used your time up. Creation. Evolution. Where did the world come from? Where did you come from? Were you created in an instant? Did you evolve from another animal or life species? These are issues that are discussed in classrooms, textbooks, and sometimes around your break table at work, when the conversation suddenly turns serious. These kinds of questions are answered in our free Discover Bible guides. These 26 beautifully illustrated guides cover all the major themes of the Bible, and they answer some of the hardest questions of life. You can get your free copy just for the asking by contacting me. Go to VOP.com and click on the tab that says Study. That's VOP.com, the tab that says Study, or phone me, 888-456-7933. That's 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides, available just for the asking. And I think, what segment are we in now?
We are in our final segment.
Is this the final segment of the show?
You should know that.
It went by just like that. Bam, gone. Because when I'm sitting here basking in your beauty, the time flies so quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish I'd thought of that on Valentine's Day. You know?
Well, I'll still take it, even post-Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I don't know what everybody did back at Valentine's Day this year. I know that's in the distant past now in your rearview mirror, but in our house, this is how we celebrate Valentine's Day. The night before, we ask each other, now, did you get me a card? No. Well, good. I didn't get you one either. Now, you're not going to get me one, right? No.
Right. Agreed?
Agreed.
We pretty much handshake on it.
Yeah, so that you can't... So that you can't come to the next day and somebody pulls out a card and one ups the other one.
Yeah, you have to be in agreement. It's either both give a card or nobody gives a card.
So we love each other deeply, but we haven't celebrated that foolish Hallmark moment in years.
Oh, come
you
on.
don't think it's foolish, do you?
No, I like it. I always get the girls a little something. Even though our oldest is now away in college, I still sent her a Valentine card and a little treat.
That is so sad.
No, it was fun.
Girls are like puppy dog tails and...
No. Really? Our youngest is like that? I don't think so.
Okay.
But anyway.
Questions. Let's get back to our questions. Valentine's Day is for girls.
Probably.
Ask all the men in the control room. Is Valentine's Day for guys or girls? It's girls.
Oh, Hareem agrees with you anyway.
Yep. Men
Okay.
hate that day because the price of flowers goes up 400%.
Well, I don't like all that either.
And then you know that your wife's going to want to be able to tell her friends what she got for Valentine's Day.
Yeah. You know I'm very practical.
Yep.
That's why we have the handshake agreement about Valentine's
I got you a handshake for Valentine's Day.
Pretty much. All right.
I got you a
ready?
nice new drill.
Oh, you did.
I got you a
not.
nice new drill
That
and a
would
table
not go
saw.
over.
You're getting a table saw for Valentine's Day. That's practical. Oh, you don't want to use it, honey? Well,
I'll take care of that
I'll
for
take,
you.
Yeah. We'll put that in the garage then. I'm so sorry. That was bad thinking.
So should I buy you some yarn for Valentine's Day?
No.
No.
What am I going to do with yarn?
Exactly. I could take it for you.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready for another question?
Why don't we just buy ourselves a gift on Valentine's Day?
How about we do no gifts?
I
That's
love
worked.
me. I love me. I'm going to go out and get me a skill saw.
Oh, dear.
Okay, let's get back to our questions.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So this question begins with a Bible verse.
All right.
The individual writes, this is Amos chapter 3 and verse 7. Surely the sovereign Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants, the prophets.
Okay.
And here's the question. If this is the case, why or where is the Holocaust in Bible prophecy?
Yeah.
It seems that since it was done to over 6 million Jews of all people, it should be in there somewhere. Good question.
And I guess we could ask that question of a lot of things. You know, Stalin murdered, I forget how many, 20.
Yeah.
You know.
Multi-million.
Yeah, and Pol Pot, 1 million people, and it looms large on the horizon. It was absolutely horrific. But as I have been teaching Bible prophecy publicly, people have noticed that it doesn't show up on the list.
Right.
Well, here's why. It does and it doesn't, but in the sense that it doesn't show up specifically. There are people who are convinced that it is. I don't agree with them. But the grand sweep of Bible prophecy we mentioned earlier in the show, it's covering large spans of history, and the focal point is Israel relating to Gentile nations. Now, you could make an argument with the Holocaust that you've got Jews in Germany, and you've got the broken up Roman Empire, which are the nations of Europe. That's what they are. So that would qualify. When Bible prophecy is driving at something very specific, and it's driving to very specific points. And one of the things that it's describing at that point is that, well, let me put it this way. Old Testament prophecy reveals Israel as it really is. God applauding and saying, job well done when Israel's doing right. But God saying, you blew it here and you did this wrong. That's the Old Testament.
Absolutely.
New Testament prophecy does the same thing with the Christian church. Hey, here's where if you read the letters to the churches in Revelation 2 and 3, you've got Jesus saying, here's what I like about what you're doing, and here's what you've got wrong and need to repent of. So the same thing happens. So the focal point in the New Testament is kind of shifting to, well, how do we do this without spending 3 hours on Bible prophecy? All of these grand time prophecies in Daniel and Revelation cover the empires of the world down to the second coming. So you've got Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome in the book of Daniel. That's widely recognized. Then you have the breakup of the Roman Empire. You've got the fragmented toes of the statue and the 10 horns in Daniel 7, statues in Daniel 2. And it focuses on Western Europe. And then one of the key thoughts in Daniel 2 is that no one's ever going to put this back together. That's the focal point until Jesus comes and replaces all human kingdoms. So, is the Holocaust an important event? Yeah, there's no question about it. Is it an atrocity? It's one of the worst in human history, no question about it. But the focal point of Bible prophecy is the failure of human kingdoms and Jesus replacing it in the end.
Right.
Now, why you're going to have to ask God why he didn't specifically describe that when we meet him, but he's driving to a certain point and following a certain thread of thought. And without spending hours on it, it's hard for me to demonstrate what that thought is, but he's driving toward a much different and a very surprising point for the last days, something that emerges out of the Western Roman Empire. I think that what happened in Germany is indicative of the problem. So it's there in that sense. It's a symptom of what the Bible is describing. Matthew 24 tells us that in the last days, Matthew 24, verse 12, lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. We read of wars, rumors of wars, famine, pestilence, and the general human condition deteriorating and getting worse and more wicked as Jesus comes. So it's there.
Okay.
And the 20th century had, we got to remember, that's 6 million, yes. But 203 million died in warfare in the 20th century, and that certainly is described in Matthew chapter 24.
Certainly, yeah.
War, nation against nation, it's all there, and it definitely describes human beings becoming loveless and cold to each other, and death, life being disrespected, and a lot of these things. There's not a line item that says, and one of these Western European nations is going to, kill 6 million of the Jews. But is it there in all the symptoms listed? No question about it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Shawn, next question. How do I make sense of the story or the account of the rich man and Lazarus in the Bible?
We've only got 7 minutes. We've got 7 minutes to answer this. Yeah, people get confused with this story because it doesn't make sense if you read it literally, and they don't know how to make sense of it. Here's what we need to understand. It is a parable. And that's important to understand. If you try to read, this is Luke chapter 16, if you try to read that as a literal account, you're going to run into trouble. It doesn't work well literally. Some people think this is a literal account of the afterlife, and it can't be. It can't be. For a while, if you read the story, you'll see that. So we know it's a parable, and how do I know that? Well, it's in Luke chapter 16. And if you read the chapters leading up to this, it's this long string of parables that Jesus tells, and they all begin the same way. So you've got in Luke chapter 12, the ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. Whose ground was it?
Certain rich man.
Certain rich man. In Luke 13, verse 16, a certain man had a fig tree planted in his graveyard. Right? Luke 14, a certain man gave a great supper and invited many. Luke 15, the parable of the prodigal son. A certain man had 2 sons. Are you sensing a theme in the way that these they all start the same way? The parable of the rich steward in Luke 16. There was a certain rich man who had a steward. Okay, so now when we get to Luke 16, it starts exactly the same way. There was a certain rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. It starts exactly the same way. Okay. And yet sometimes because we didn't read the whole book of Luke, we miss that point and we try to read it like it's a literal story. No, it's not. Jesus is actually taking a literary device that was well known to the Pharisees. That's his audience. And they had picked it up from Alexandria in years past. And there were Jews living in Alexandria who had mixed some Greek philosophy in with their own beliefs, and Jesus is addressing them on their own terms and telling this story. So the question is, if it's a parable, what does it mean? Okay, let's read it. Luke 9, do we have time to read it? Sure we do.
Sure.
There was a certain rich man. This is Luke 16, verse 19. There was a certain rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. So he's doing well. and he's dressed in the colors of royalty, fine linen and purple. But there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, full of sores, who was laid at his gate, desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. So you got a poor guy, got nothing to eat. He just wishes he could get a few crumbs off the table. So we have a picture of someone in royalty who's got plenty, and we have Lazarus who has nothing. Okay? Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. Okay, who came to lick his sores?
The dogs.
I just wanted you to have to say that. Say the whole thing as a complete sentence.
The dogs came and licked his sores.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right? So it was that the beggar died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. Now, Abraham's bosom would be his chest, his rib cage.
Right.
Would that be literal or symbolic language? When you die, do you live inside Abraham's rib cage, yes or no?
Well, no.
No, it's a symbolic language.
Right.
Okay, the rich man also died and was buried, and being in torments in Hades, just a Greek word for the grave, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Right? Do you think he literally sees Abraham standing there and Lazarus is in his rib cage?
No,
Again, right? It's
do
silly.
not.
It's
Right.
symbolic. Then he cried and said, Father Abraham. What does the rich man call Abraham?
Father Abraham.
Question, who calls Abraham father?
The Israelites do.
That's right.
Yes.
The Jews.
Well,
and the
plus-
Pharisees did.
And the Pharisees did. That's true. So Jesus' audience did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the idea of being in Abraham's bosom, you kind of have that idea of a father holding a child.
That's right.
So it fits.
It's Father Abraham. That's right.
Yeah.
Have mercy on me. Send Lazarus that he may dip his tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I'm tormenting in this flame. Okay, if this is a literal account, do you really suppose that people in heaven and hell can have a conversation?
I hope not.
No, I hope not, too. Okay, verse 25. But Abraham said, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he's comforted and you are tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from there pass to us. So what does it mean? Well, important keys. We're going to have to go super quickly. All right. The rich man is clothed in purple. We mentioned that. It's color of royalty. He calls Abraham his father. He's speaking to the Pharisees. They called Abraham father. Right? You have to remember, there's a prophecy in Daniel 9 that says that there were 70 more weeks for God's people, Daniel's people, and his city. And that's drawing to a close at this point in history. We're almost out of time. Jesus is about to die. And he won't share with Lazarus, this poor guy. Right? These are the rich people. They won't share. And the dogs are licking his sores. What did the sort of more strict, observant Pharisees and so on of the day called Gentiles?
Oh, dogs.
They called them
Right.
dogs. That's
Right.
how they considered Gentiles. So if you compare this to a story in Matthew 15, this starts to make big sense.
Okay.
There's a Canaanite woman, a Syrophoenician woman, who comes to Jesus, and it says, Lord, help me. And he said, well, it's not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs.
Yeah.
He's just using the language. He doesn't really mean that. He's using the language the disciples might use of her
Sure.
to make a point.
Yeah.
And she says, well, Lord, even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table.
Ah.
Right.
Same language.
This is a story of the Jews and the Gentiles. The Jews were supposed to be a light to the Gentile nations and share the gospel with them. Instead, they called them dogs. They wouldn't walk through their towns. They took the long way around.
Yeah.
And now it's switching. Lazarus becomes part of Abraham's family, and the rich man is in torments. And then he's in torment saying, well, warn the rest of my family. Well, here's what Abraham says to him when he says, please warn my family. Luke 16. Abraham said to him, they have Moses and the prophets. Who had Moses and the prophets?
Well, the Jewish people did.
They did,
Yeah.
right? And they said, no, Father, but if one rises from the dead, then they'll repent. And Jesus said, if they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, they won't be convinced even though someone rises from the dead. Jesus rises from the dead, and his critics still won't believe him.
Yeah.
He raises someone named Lazarus
Lazarus.
from the dead, and
Yeah.
they still won't believe him.
Right.
Jesus said this in Matthew 21. This is important. He says to Israel, he's weeping over his own people. Therefore I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken from you and given to a nation bearing the fruits of it. Galatians 3 says that now, or I think it's in chapter 3, it's somewhere in Galatians, if you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's seed. We are now all welcome into Abraham's bosom.
Yes, we are heirs of the promise.
We were always supposed to be. Israel was supposed to be a light to the Gentiles. They didn't do it, and the warning was, this is going to be taken from you and given to the Gentile nations. Acts 13, Paul and Barnabas say, lo, you judge yourselves unworthy of this, we turn to the Gentiles. That's what this story was telling.
Good.
It's a figurative story about what was about judgment about to fall on Israel for not having been faithful in those days to the gospel commission, and I hear the music playing. I'm out of time.
You are out of time.
And the Gentile nations now getting to sit with Abraham. That's what
Nice.
it's about. It's not a literal account.
Shawn, we have lots more questions. We need to do another program.
Yeah, we should do another program. That was a really good idea.
That would be great.
That might be what you hear next week, because there's like hundreds of them sitting here, and some of them are really, really good.
They are.
You managed to comb that hair that went up during the break. You had a hair that flew
Yeah,
away on you.
I think it's better.
And now we're out of time. Quit playing with your hair. That's it for this week, folks. Until next time, I'm Shawn Boonstra.